Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
I know the topmost things on your mind are Corona and China. So we will talk about China a little bit, but towards the latter half of today's Katta Clutter. Let me talk in somewhat more detail about something else that has come up, looking at way to the west of India's borders, not very far away, maybe less than an hour and a half as a plane flies from Delhi, but looking at the Pakistan-Afghanistan borders and at Afghanistan and see what's happening there. Because a bunch of new revelations have come out over the last week, which are quite sensational, which are now playing into American politics, electoral campaign, but not just that, these have major implications when you look at the state of the world and when you look at the state of our neighborhood, because this is ultimately our neighborhood as well. So this was a story break in the New York Times by 3 reporters, not their Kabul reporter who was brilliant, but 3 reporters in Washington. Looks like it was an intelligence leak or a White House leak. Story by, and I am giving you links to all these stories. You will see some on the screen as well. Story by Charlie Savage, Eric Schmidt and Michael Schwartz. Now this was quite a sensational story which said that in March, US intelligence in a White House briefing told the president that they had found evidence that Russian intelligence, force of habit, I start out by saying Soviet, Russian intelligence had given bounties, has put bounties on coalition forces. Coalition forces means Afghan forces and also NATO forces led essentially by the Americans in Afghanistan, and these bounties were offered to Taliban to kill them. Now that was quite a sensational revelation. As that came out, soon enough Washington Post also followed it up. So there is another story with more detail by Ellen Nakashima, Karen DeYoung, Missy Ryan and John Hudson. Again you see it on the screen and you also have the link which also confirmed this. Now what the hell was going on? Why were the Russians, if at all, Russians have denied it of course, Trump's office has also denied that he has any knowledge of it, but Times and Washington Post stand by the story, and I think the story is by and large, if I look at American and international media, it does look like the stories are quite authentic. So why would the Russians do it, and if so, who among the Russians has done it? So the unit that is being, or the intelligence agency that's being blamed for this is something called Unit 29155 of GRU, G-R-U. You might remember that from James Bond movies and books. In fact, it's because of the name GRU that I also instinctively came up with Soviet first but stopped halfway at so. So this is the Russian military intelligence, Russian Ministry of Defense's military intelligence unit, and Unit 29155 is a very specialized unit. In fact, this unit hit the headlines in 2018 with the targeted assassination effort in Salisbury, England in March 2018 by using nerve gas to poison Sergei Skripal, who is a former GRU operative who was working, who had got compromised to MI6 and was working for British intelligence and then had defected with his daughter. This poisoning was carried out on him and his daughter both, and that is a very well known story, caused a lot of trouble between Russia and UK and Russia and the Western countries. So it is the same unit. Now what do these stories say? The stories say that they offered bounty money for coalition forces including Americans. Now in 2019, 20 Americans were killed in Afghanistan. So there is no knowing yet, and these writers also don't know how many of these were killed as a consequence of these Russian bounties or alleged Russian bounties, if they were Russian bounties. Once again, Russian government, that is Vladimir Putin's spokesman himself, has categorically denied this, and he said if any such allegations are made, we will deny them. Now, some of these killings, Washington Post again has data on Americans killed over the last 3 years. There are 10 killed in 2018. There are 16 killed in 2019. Although the larger figure is 20, so maybe some might be accidents or whatever. But they say that some of these killings are what is called as green on blue. So, green on blue, those who know the militaries or military lingo will know this is a kind of friendly fire. Usually you would say blue on blue, but this is green on blue because these are Americans killed by Afghan soldiers they are working with. And it is quite well known that Afghan forces have been infiltrated by the Taliban. So, there is no knowing if these greens were actually Afghan infiltrators or if they were working on bounties. But the fact is that these bounties were offered. That's what NYT and Washington Post claim, and they've also said that as soon as it was discovered, American allies, especially the British, were also informed because they also have people exposed in Afghanistan. Taliban themselves have denied it, and I think if you hear this denial, you will not find it shocking. It is the Taliban. You should not find it amusing because it's so serious, but frankly, I think you will laugh. So, this is Zahidullah Mujahid, who is spokesman of the Taliban, who's called this an attempt to defame them. He says these kinds of deal with the Russians were never done or any Russian intelligence agency. And then he goes on to say, and that's the reason I said might make you laugh, maybe cynically, maybe in frustration, whatever, maybe some amusement at the innocence of or the honesty of this Taliban spokesman. He says our targeted killings and assassinations were ongoing in years before, and we did this with our own resources. So, he said we were carrying out targeted killings and assassinations for years on our own with our own resources. We did not need anybody's money to carry out these targeted killings. Then he said that changed after the deal with the Americans, and their lives are now secure and we don't attack them. So, that is what he said. You trust the Taliban, good luck to you. Then it is the first time, these stories tell us, it's the first time that evidence has come up of Russian units, remember Russian, not Soviet, Russian units targeting US soldiers, Russian spy units targeting US soldiers. In the past, US Congress has been very tough on Putin and Russia. There have been big allegations that Russians interfered with American elections. There are big allegations that Russians interfere in American politics. Donald Trump has been quite soft on Russia. In fact, he even wanted to invite Russia as a new member of the G7, in response to which Russian embassy in Delhi of all places issued a statement saying there cannot be a G7 expansion without China, because Russia would not become party to an isolation of China by Donald Trump. Nevertheless, Donald Trump has been soft on Russia, whereas US Congress has been very tough on Russia. But see, top US commander in Kabul, General John Nicholson, he told the BBC in 2018, he said we've had weapons brought to this headquarters and given to us by Afghan leaders, and they said these were given by the Russians to Taliban. So it's obvious that the Russians, that the Americans believe, let's also not jump to conclusions, that the Americans believe that the Russians have been arming the Taliban. You know what does it remind me of? It reminds me of a story that I had covered in great detail from Sri Lanka. That's when IPKF was fighting the Tamil Tigers, and Premadasa's government then was delivering weapons and supplies to Tamil Tigers to fight IPKF, who were his allies. IPKF had gone to help the Sri Lankan government, but he was giving arms, delivering arms to fight them, to the Tamil Tigers. In fact, ironically, in Tata trucks given to his army, Sri Lankan army, free by the Indian army. Now, this is something that Lalit Atulat Mudali, then had told me he's the former National Security Minister, Internal as well as Defence Minister of Sri Lanka, a very tall leader. It was published while he was alive, and then also it was stated in an interview with me by Chandrika Kumara Tunge when she was President of Sri Lanka. This was a published interview in India Today where she said that he was supplying arms to Tamil Tigers fighting your army. So this is enemy's enemy, maybe your enemy also, but sometimes you get so vicious in your thinking, or you have more complicated motives, and big powers have complicated motives. So there is a lot of guesswork on Russia's motives. Why are the Russians doing it? And it's all a guesswork right now, that Putin has been trying to destabilize some Western powers is well known, that he also has the temperament of the Soviet leaders, that this Russia, it has limited powers. It is quite a powerful country. It has great military power. It has great nuclear weapons. It is a big energy power. It's a weak economic power and a weakening economic power. But once again, when you have military power or intelligence power or intelligence agencies power, which is way in excess of your real economic potential or political potential or presence, it causes an imbalance. We see it happening next door to us in Pakistan, where the military is a lot more powerful than the basic strength of Pakistani state and Pakistani society or Pakistani polity. Russia has some of that, and what that does is it gives the leaders exaggerated ambition. So Soviet Union has vanished. Russia is now a pale shadow of the Soviet Union economically and politically and diplomatically, but militarily it is the inheritor of this Soviet Union mindset, but also not just militarily but also strategically. So it wants to punch above its weight, and it's able to do it because it still has great military, great nuclear weapons and great intelligence agencies. So that is the closest analysis that I find convincing. Now I find also a 2019 New York Times story talking about the same secretive unit in GRU 21955, and it says it first came, their first move was a destabilization campaign in Moldova, followed by poisoning of an arms dealer in Bulgaria, then a thwarted coup in Montenegro. It's all happening in Europe. Last year, and they mentioned last year, I think it's a 2019 story, the poisoning of the Skripals in England. So then they say, the story goes on to say that earlier these were all seen as isolated events, but now Western intelligence is piecing them together and seeing a pattern. The stories that have come out just now, or the revelations that have come out just now, they are now confirming to us or claiming to confirm to us that this is all part of a systematic campaign carried out by these secretive units. So what is this unit? 29155 unit of GRU. Again I see a line which says, hidden behind concrete walls of the headquarters of the 161st Special Purpose Specialist Training Center in eastern Moscow. This sits with the command hierarchy of GRU of GRU. This is the story I read from the New York Times. And then it goes on to say that look, GRU cyber units like 26165, that's another unit, 74455, both of these are cyber units, 26165 and 74455. Both were involved in the hacking of the Democratic National Convention's servers during the 2016 elections, which then leaked a lot of stuff that embarrassed Hillary Clinton and apparently contributed to her defeat. Then they say Unit 29155, which is in question now in Afghanistan, for example, that is supposed to be staffed by veterans of the Afghan, Chechnya and Ukraine campaigns. from Russian army. And why are they doing it? It could be there is some guesswork. It could be revenge for an American operation in Syria in 2018, when a lot of the Russian mercenaries were killed when the Americans organized an attack on some Syrian forces, which included obviously Russian mercenaries. But otherwise, maybe it is just to create chaos in the Western world to the extent possible, especially now with the US elections coming up. So this is the one big revelation right now. Now, where does it leave this region, and where does this leave the Taliban? So you have a great article by Mujib Mashal, who is a brilliant writer in the New York Times, 26th of May, who talks about how Taliban won the war, how they wore down another great superpower after they had defeated the Soviets. That was not the Taliban, that was the earlier avatar of the Taliban, which is the Mujahideen. So they say that, he says that Taliban now have 50-60,000 active fighters. And how did they preserve these? He says that after the first assault by the Americans, Taliban broke themselves in small groups under local commanders. Their central leadership, on the other hand, all disappeared to Pakistan, and they were given refuge by the Pakistani army and intelligence. So they were secured there. And while they were secured there, the small bands under smaller leaders then started replicating exactly the same tactics of using the mountains and passes and narrow passages in the mountains to harass and kill and ultimately defeat the Americans, that the Americans had taught them to use against the Soviets. So jiska juta uska sir. So basically the Americans were fed the poison that they had themselves gifted to the Taliban, or before that to the Mujahideen, to be served to the Soviets in the past. So in fact, Mujib Mashal says, from that safety, the Taliban planned a longer war of attrition against NATO and US troops. And as we said, they used their old blueprint for fighting in the mountains. So this is the larger story that we are looking at. And remember, in the very beginning, I promised you that I will also talk about China, but towards the end of this Kathak letter. So I will only talk about an article that I have read today, Words of Wisdom. There are people all around us who are much wiser than us, definitely wiser than me. One of them is M.K. Narayanan, our former national security advisor and our intelligence czar for a long time. In fact, Ajit Doval worked under him and was his favorite for a very long time while they were in service in Intelligence Bureau. So he's done this article in the Hindu today, trying to figure out China's motives and to see where India failed in assessing them. So he says, quite interestingly, he says India's IMINT and SIGINT. IMINT is image intelligence, which is satellite intelligence, or satellite or photo reconnaissance aircraft, drones, whatever, or SIGINT, which is signal intelligence or electronic intelligence. They are very strong now. So there is no way that India did not know that the Chinese were bringing in all this stuff into this area abutting the line of actual control. That could not have been a surprise. That India knew. But why did India fail to read China's intentions? It does look like, my words not his, it does look like that China has made all the moves and India has responded. India has failed to anticipate China's moves. And then he says that, look, intelligence is not just getting all this basic khabar. So many tanks are coming, so many guns are coming, this unit is coming, that unit is coming. Intelligence also means reading the other side's mind. And he goes on to say that reading the mind of the Chinese is tough at any point of time. But that's the reason you need domain expertise on China. That's the reason professionals have to be a lot more involved in China. So he finds 3 or 4 faults which I'll mention to you very briefly, and I will give you a link. Please read the article and make up your own mind. Number 1, he sees a fault with RAW having insufficient domain expertise in China. Now, I don't know, he knows much better these things than any of us would, but it is possible that this happened because we got too focused on terrorism, Pakistan, etc., etc. But he says lack of domain knowledge there. Second, he said National Security Council Secretariat, which is supposed to get all this intelligence and digest it and give the government advice of the adversary's intentions and the larger strategic picture. That obviously failed to do this. That's the reason government was not able to anticipate what the Chinese actually wanted or how serious they were about this intrusion, that this was not a regular intrusion like Chumar or Doklam or Depsang in the past. This was something more substantive and more different and something that wanted actual changes on the ground. So he says that one mistake that NSCS has made is to abolish, that is under this government, Modi government, that is to abolish the Joint Intelligence Committee, where more of the wiser, experienced intelligence people sat and assessed this information. And then he finally finds fault with summit diplomacy. He says if you rely too much on the summits, you tend to then overlook the hard groundwork that is done by civil servants, diplomats, policy makers, by teams on the ground. Because as we have also believed, the summits happen when groundwork is done, because summits are for then a grand show. On the other hand, he is suggesting, you can agree with it, you can disagree with it, I agree with it, and I will talk and write more about it going ahead. He says that the form of these summits has overshadowed the substance of the staff work that goes on underneath, and then he makes a startling comparison. That is something when M.K. Narayanan says that, you have to be very careful. He mentions how Chamberlain, the British Prime Minister before the Second World War, he relied too much on summit diplomacy and completely misread the intentions of the other side before the Second World War. So that to me is a very important point that he is making. Once again, you might say that he worked under the Congress party, etc., etc., but he is a nationalist, as much a nationalist as you can find anybody to be in India, and also he is among the wisest, the most experienced and shrewdest intelligence people that we have seen. He has negotiated with the Chinese for a very long time. He was the government of India's main interlocutor with the Chinese on the border issue.